I might just be Chris Stapleton's #1 fan. But does that mean I'm gonna like his whiskey? Let's find out. Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Bourbon Hutch, and thanks so much for joining me on this journey through the world of whiskey. So that's right, today we are taking a look at Traveler Whiskey. This is a pretty brand new release from Buffalo Trace in collaboration with Chris Stapleton, who is a country music artist, although to put him only in that category is criminally to underrate him, if you ask me. So he's got rock, rhythm and blues, soul. Through and through, he's influenced by a lot of stuff, and if you listen to his music, you know he's not your typical country pop artist. So I'm super excited to dive into Traveler Whiskey because I'm a huge, huge fan of Chris Stapleton. I don't know, there's not many people out there that I know of or wouldn't be willing to put my own fandom up against. I know pretty much every lyric to every single one of his songs. I know the songs that he wrote before he even became famous and that others did. I've seen pretty much every YouTube video that I can get my hands on of him singing because I love his voice so much. So, huge Chris Stapleton fanboy here, admittedly. I also happen to like Buffalo Trace quite a bit. As somebody who's very much into bourbon, it's hard to deny that it's quite a fantastic distillery. As hard as their stuff is to find, they make great products. So, you'd think all of that being combined together means I gotta love this, right? Well, maybe. We'll see. I think there are a little bit of, I'll call them yellow flags, not quite red flags, on this whiskey. First of all, we don't know basically anything about it. It doesn't have real transparency at all. We know that it is blend number 40. They tried at least 50 is what the marketing said, and they tried all of those to get down to the best blend that they could. Interesting feature of that, though, is that Chris Stapleton, as far as I know, has been sober for many, many years, so I am not sure how he was involved in the process at all, and we're not told. It's a 90 proof whiskey, probably designed to be very easy sipping and very approachable, and overall, what's in this blend, I've heard rumors that it's mostly Canadian whiskey, that there might be some Barton in here. So a lot of stuff's been flying around, but it is a blended whiskey, so we know it's not technically a bourbon, and that means a lot of things could go in there. Although we do know that no like clear neutral spirits are in here. That has been confirmed as far as I know. I think Jason C. at the Mash and Drum, I watched his review of it, and he talked about that. So definitely whiskey in here. The question is, what is it exactly? How's it gonna taste? Don't know. In any case, since I am such a huge Chris Stapleton fan, I'm gonna try to put aside my bias here and just taste the whiskey and let you guys know my honest opinion, as I always try to do. Before we do that though, thought I'd give myself a little bit of a challenge to try to prove to myself and to you how big of a Chris Stapleton fan I am by asking you to comment and let me know about this whiskey, what you think, with as many Chris Stapleton song titles and lyrics references as I can get into one ask. So without further ado, let me know about this whiskey and you. Fire away in the comments below. Is Traveler as smooth as Tennessee whiskey, as sweet as strawberry wine? Does it make you want to stare at your glass during a whiskey sunrise and say, I think I'm in love with you. You are the joy of my life. I want more of you. Let's get on a white horse and ride off to where rainbows never die. Or does it have you thinking maybe Buffalo Trace should consider starting over? That there's nobody to blame but the marketing team. And you're asking yourself, why you gotta be so cold and just make a buck? Is this millionaire partnership making you think, this was the last thing I needed? You should probably leave. I never should have trusted you anyway. I was wrong. Or maybe you just don't care that much. You're kind of sitting on the fence and thinking, I could go either way. Okay, all right, that was a lot of fun. Yes, I did practice that a bunch beforehand to try to get it right, and it took quite a while, but I hope it was worth it. I hope you honestly will let me know what you think of this collaboration. And now it's my turn to get into it and let you know what I think of this whiskey. So, on the nose, Traveler. Okay, so my first impression is that it's much closer to like a Scotch or an Irish whiskey than it is to a bourbon. Very light and sweet. Kind of a general vanilla sweetness. Maybe a touch of like a bright red cherry or very, very light like strawberry. Some graininess and youth. Some corn. I think it's got a touch of like a sugar cookie, very kind of light dusting of sugar on top. Tiny little astringency, but not much. It's very approachable. Maybe a touch of apple as well. So very little depth to it. It's almost all these light, bright notes on the nose. So I think that's kind of to be expected for a blended whiskey. The real question here though with Traveler is this is $40. Typically you'd see blended whiskeys for around 20, 25 bucks max. At least the cheaper ones, the sort of bottom shelfers. This is a Buffalo Trace collaboration with a huge artist, so obviously they're charging $40 for it. Question is it worth it? So let's dive in on the palate to find out. Cheers. Okay. It is extremely easy to sip on, very approachable, and I think that's probably what they're going for, to be honest with you. They don't want to offend anybody necessarily or turn anybody away. This might be a lot of people's first introduction to whiskey in general, since they know Chris Stapleton. Flavor profile here, I'd say there is that sweet vanilla, little touch of brown sugar, just a tiny bit of it, a little bit of apple, some honey, and maybe a touch of that cherry sweetness. But it's really, really light and delicate, and honestly, incredibly quick experience. It fades pretty quickly. I wouldn't say there's a lot of depth here. Let's dive in on the second sip and see what more we can discern. Cheers. Okay, so I took a little bit bigger sip there just to see if I could get a more robust feel. And I definitely got that. I mean, it's not a super robust feel in the mouth, but it's enough to coat things a little bit. It's got, again, that brown sugar, lots of that kind of standard vanilla sweetness. I got a little bit more of like a cherry lollipop on that sip and a little bit more apple. And then I am getting a little bit of that sugar cookie, shortbread cookie kind of note. So again, very light, a little bit of fruit, a lot of good vanilla sweetness, but not a ton of complexity, not a lot of those like deep oak or brown sugar notes that I typically look for on a whiskey or a bourbon. It's definitely more in that Irish whiskey category in terms of its delicateness and profile. All right, let's go in for the third sip. We'll evaluate the finish and the overall experience here. Cheers. So you know what? That has a little more staying power than maybe I was giving it credit for. It is very, very sweet. It's got that, again, vanilla is the main note here. Then you get a little bit of that corn and graininess, but there is like a cherry lollipop and some apple. And I'm getting some of that like shortbread cookie. The finish doesn't last particularly long. There's a tiny touch of spice, but I still have a little bit of just general sweetness lingering on my palate, which is good. Overall, I think that this is designed to be exactly what it is, which is super inoffensive, super easy to sip on, almost like deceptively easy to sip on. I think for $40, that's where I start to feel a little bit challenged, especially when I think about other Buffalo Trace products that are supposedly MSRP below that, like Buffalo Trace itself and Eagle Rare. I would definitely take either of those bottles over this. But in terms of the whiskey itself, if I took price out of the equation, this is super approachable and easy to sip on. I enjoy it. There's no bad notes in it. That's a great point to make, is there is nothing in here that's gonna make you think, I don't like that. I think your struggle or any qualms that you have with it would be, I wish there was a lot more that this offered. So it's kind of exactly what you might expect from a blended whiskey from a major distillery that's kind of leveraging a great musician's brand to get bottles out. I wish it was a little bit richer and deeper to kind of match how I feel about Chris Stapleton and his voice and his sultry tones and his soul. Although again, I don't know how he was really involved in the process if he doesn't drink. maybe he nosed it. I don't know. I think that they could have done more justice to how rich and awesome Chris Stapleton's music is and how he kind of stands apart from other country music artists. And they kind of just made a whiskey that's admittedly a little bit forgettable. Very sweet, very approachable, but a little forgettable. All right, everybody, that's my review. Hopefully my bias didn't get in the way. I think I've been pretty fair here and given it a fair analysis. It's fine, I'm enjoying sipping on it, but I wish there was a little more here presented through this whiskey. Though, let me know in the comments below. I'm not doing that whole spiel again, but let me know what you think. While you're at it, hit the like button, and also if you haven't already, please consider subscribing to the channel. Trying to hit 2,000 subscribers still here in the early part of 2024, and just launching into another great year of content. You may have noticed, if you've been watching this whole video and wondering why hasn't he mentioned the lighting, I have done a little upgrade on the lighting here. At least I considered an upgrade. Previously it was kind of yellowed out and very bright and harsh, so hopefully this is a little bit more of a suitable vibe for our whiskey reviews. Anyway, until I see you guys again for another video, all I can say is keep drinking good whiskey and cheers.